about this. This is something we've been working towards for a long time, is a public demonstration of the ITABoK in a member-accessible, publicly editable or upgradable version of the body of knowledge that we've compiled over 13 years of working with architects and architect teams. So to me, this is a really big day. We're going to cover quite a bit of ground today, but you know, I want to talk a little bit about basically a little bit about why this is important. I also want to give a huge round of support and thanks to our authors, talk a little bit about our collaboration process to date, and we'll also talk about what that's going to look like in the future. Then we're going to dive into some of the meat of the ITABoK and why it's been so fundamentally successful for so many organizations and architect practitioners. So, when we cover that, we're going to talk about the capabilities, the engagement models, and the career planning tools that we've put together. In many ways, the ITABoK has been this sort of hidden body of knowledge, and it hasn't been hidden, but it's been hidden behind our training, and it's been hidden behind our sort of membership and large documents and things like that. And as architects, we wanted to get this out there and really have a much stronger crowdsourcing model for this body of knowledge. Now, there's some good reasons why that happens. ISA is, you'll see this in the materials related to the ITABoK. ISA isn't striving for what every architect in the universe thinks architecture is for anybody with an opinion. As there's that old joke that you put 3 architects in a room and you end up with 12 opinions. We're looking for what works. And so as we talk about what's important, we talk about why it's important and the components of the ITABoK. Keep in mind what our goal here is what's actually working in the industry. A friend of mine recently, an architect at one of our larger corporate members, recently told me a great story. You're actually going to see an interview on the ISA website with him about a really, what I think of as a very telling, but also somewhat humorous story, in my opinion. Humorous in laughing at ourselves, in that he's a bowling coach, and the way they certify bowling coaches is tremendously rigorous. The sport is something that they understand at a scientific level. And he told me a case study recently of his certification process at the kind of Olympic level of coaching. So not a unimportant level of repeatability, much like the importance of the repeatability of what architects do on a day in and day out basis for their clients and their employers. And the story basically goes that he was that the way you get certified is that 2 coaches are put, or one of the components of certification is that 2 coaches are put side by side. They're not allowed to talk. There's a head coach, both that reviews their work. Both coaches are allowed to watch a student bowler. In this case, the student bowler was the head of an Olympic team. So again, not a student in the sense of what I think of as a student bowler, which might be going to the bowling alley once a month or something, but an Olympic athlete. So they're both allowed to evaluate the person. They both have to write up a plan, neither one of which are allowed to talk to each other. The head coach then takes those 2 plans and reviews them. If either plan differs from the other in any significant way, both coaches fail. Now, to me, that was a telling moment in certification, because if you can imagine what it would take to understand architecture successes to the degree that they understand how to deliver a bowling ball successfully, and what an individual needs to do within their sport to perfect their performance, you can understand what the ICE is really about. We're not looking for hype. We're not looking for the next marketing pitch. We're not just looking for the next technology craze or the next business craze. We're looking for business technology strategy that works in practice. Business models driven from big data, from mobile, But again, not just big data and mobile, but business models that are driven from that. How does our organization innovate and compete effectively using technology as strategy? That means that word innovate becomes absolutely essential to the ISA definition of what an architect is. And this is where we have passion. We are doing things in the ITABoK that have never been done before. And this is what makes it so important. The ITABoK is a people framework over a process framework. Now, we've been told for 40 years in industrial thinking that we can simply take a process and make people automatons within that process and duplicate outputs over and over again. And if you look at many of the frameworks that are available today, they are process focused. In that process focus, it takes the innovation and the ability for the professional to fundamentally change the way they do things to have better outcomes, because we have to focus on the process. Now, this would include many frameworks that are well known. Again, the point of the ITABoK isn't to say those frameworks are wrong. The point is to say that you cannot do this without improving yourself as an architect and the architects on your team. It basically says that anywhere from 1 to 500 highly professional, capable architects will do better if they have the right skills than 1 to 500 people who are inserted in the best process in the world. So that basically, and if you think about the Agile movement, this is very similar to that. The other thing, again, about the ITABoK is we are innovation focused and not governance focused. What does that mean? That means, when you boil it down, the ITABoK says you will not say, your job is not to say no to a bunch of things. It's to go find the yeses and then lead those into execution and get them done before you spend time reviewing. I just met with an organization that had just canceled their EA program, and this is the 10th organization this year that I've of size that has, again, canceled their EA program and is looking to reinvigorate it. And you know what? One of the things that each of those organizations has in common, their enterprise architecture initiative was based on governance of programs, projects, features, products, ideas, and not on delivery and finding new ideas. They were spending time, quote, reviewing project success and project designs as opposed to creating them. Now, what does that mean in the ITABoK? Well, the ITABoK says the chief surgeon still does surgery. And if that doesn't make sense, I want you to think about it for a second. If you're spending your time on 20 projects, reviewing their designs, you're not creating anything. Because no human being, first of all, no human being can deal with more than 3 to 5 projects of size in any kind of creative or innovative capacity. It's just physically impossible. Now, we can pretend to ourselves that's not true. We can pretend to ourselves that we can provide some value, but the truth is organizations know how to do governance. The architect team is there based on the ITABoK and based on the successes that we see to actually go out and find innovation, not govern other people's decisions. Now, in advanced notions of the maturity model, we'll get into a little bit more of our function and governance, but I just wanted to set the stage there. Again, this is a fundamental slap in the face to the last 15 years of thinking about or practice about architecture, and that's why I think this is important. The other thing is the ITABoK is bottom up and not top down. We look at what are business architects doing on the ground tomorrow, today, and how do we make that more repeatable and more successful? How do we look at solution or software, infrastructure architects, and look at what they're doing on the ground in projects, in sprints, in other aspects of their job that's actually repeatable, successful, and valuable? Not how can we form the biggest EA team that reports to executive of of note. Does that mean we don't know how to do enterprise architecture in the ITABoK? Absolutely not. What it means is that innovation comes from two directions. Outside, from our customers, which generally comes bottom up, as well as industry down, meaning what's happening, what's changing. The ITABoK fundamentally rephrases the architect's profession and the enterprise architecture initiatives as capturing those aspects in the most fundamental way from strategy to execution. So it's a very powerful change in the notion of how professional teams organize. And you see this in truly professional, capable, people-focused businesses. Think about hospitals. Hospitals do not focus just on top-down governance. The doctor is in charge. That is a presumption. That is, we presume it, the hospital presumes it, the industry presumes it. That means you have to make the person in the room the best they can be, not govern stupidity. And that's pretty amazing. The other thing is it's compatible to all over exclusive. And you can think of these why ITABoK as kind of our manifesto. We believe that TOGAF is valuable. We believe that FIAF is valuable. We believe that Agile is valuable, that big data is valuable, that all of those frameworks, processes, tools, and techniques are valuable, but only in certain contexts where they fundamentally impact the business model of that organization. And keep in mind, when I say business model, I mean government, I mean nonprofits. I'm not talking about just profit. I'm talking about business models and how you optimize them with technology strategy. The ITABoK by version 3 will be connected to a minimum of 3 industry frameworks. We're looking at Sophia Plus for the people interaction, the capability model that they have. Obviously, there's the architecture frameworks that we're connecting to. And then we're also looking at HR models and financial models like budgeting, et cetera, and business process models that are useful to connect the ITABoK to from tools and techniques that are usable to you. Now, I will say we are not tied to that in any sense, meaning we are going to make a successful body of knowledge that you can use independently. But so if it means sacrificing something in the ITABoK, then we won't tie into a framework. But the goal here is how do you be successful using any tools and techniques. Now, most of you will have jobs at more than one employer. Most of you will have jobs at more than 5 to 10 employers over your career, right? So over 40 or 50 years. You're not going to use TOGAF or FIAF at all of those. You're not going to use Agile at all of those. You're not going to use Scrum or Big Data or whatnot at all of those. How do we make you successful at every single one of those employers and with every single one of those contracts or customers? And that's what the ITABoK is built to do. How well we do it? Well, I'll let you judge it. It's also specializations over enterprise architecture. And I talked about this in terms of bottom up, but I want to reinforce the notion that, again, let's just talk about it in one simple way. If you're on an airplane and suddenly you start to choke or have some medical emergency, they don't scream out, is there an ear, nose, and throat specialist in the house? They scream out, is there a doctor on the plane? We are here to figure out what is the core making you an architect, how you specialize, and what your day-to-day as a specialist will look like. Now, almost all of you are specialists. We do have the notion of generalization, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But almost all of you have come up through development, come up through business analysis, come up through project management, come up through infrastructure and operations, come up through data and information management. We tend to specialize, and ISA's model recognizes that first over the generalization roles that we see in enterprise and solution. The other thing is it's action-based over model-based. Now, this is a really big deal. The vast majority of architect teams that I see that fail, they fail on a couple of different axes. And one of them is they focus more on models than they do on execution. Let's make a pretty model does not work if no one ever looks at it. Now, I want you to think about your organization, and I want you to ask yourself, how many business capability models do you have that are updated and accessed on a daily basis, even a monthly basis? How many of your architecture descriptions are ever read? How many of your architecture artifacts are used? And that's what we care about. It's not that we don't want to use models. Architects need models to think, but we cannot continue to pretend that our clients care. And that's a big change. How do we get to execution and drag the model behind us as a tool for thinking, and only expose those models and those artifacts to the world and to our stakeholders and to our shareholders that are actually used and useful in a day-to-day function? Now, I want you to think about the finance department of your organization or of a large customer you've worked with. Think about all the stuff they do inside of finance. Now, I run a company, so I get to see a lot of that. General ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, investment strategies, all of that. The finance team uses a lot of models, but what's the one that you see and that all managers see and use and think is the most essential thing that they know about finance? One model. It's called the budget. And that's it. The vast majority of us do not see any model created by finance. And by the way, finance, operations, HR, marketing, sales, all have models that they already use. I know because we play with some of them. Right? As architects, we get access to some of those models. In fact, they become essential in us understanding the strategy of that particular domain or that particular area within our businesses. Now, again, this applies to nonprofits, it applies to small companies, it applies to large. But those groups have models. You just don't have to be shackled with them. And the reason that is because they figured out that they use models to peak their own performance, not to weigh down the organization with a whole bunch of stuff they have to maintain. So let me just say one last thing. ICE is not bad-mouthing artifacts or models. In fact, we're building a reusable library of artifacts and models, but most importantly, to help you think about driving execution, not to make your partners think about maintaining yet another architecture artifact. So if it's not usable on a regular basis, we don't want it exposed. And in fact, we prefer you spend your time on innovation rather than some massive roadmap that will never be followed. Anyway, there's a lot of things to cover, so I'm going to move on. Those are the big whys, though, and this is why this is important to me. Here's some of our contributors. I just listed a few of them. There's a whole host of, through the years, we've had hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people contribute to the ITABoK. But these are your most recent. We've got folks like Maya Moore, who has contributed 4 to 5 capabilities to the ITABoK. We've got people from all over the world with all sorts of backgrounds, from all different sizes of companies and types of companies. Some are consultants, some work for product companies, some work for non-vendor companies, things like your insurance companies, etc. They come from different experience levels and specialization. And I just want to go on record as saying this was a really smart group of people that got involved in this. And they have put a lot of work into it. And I want to thank all of them and our contributors for that. The goal of the ITABoK, as I said, is targeted and controlled crowdsourcing of knowledge. It's Wikipedia for architects, but where you have to have a certain trust factor to be able to demonstrate an awareness. Now that is because all of the knowledge in the ITABoK is actionable, meaning we build certifications off of this. We build engagement models that multi-billion-dollar companies implement. So we kind of have to make sure that it's got product quality as well as just quantity. So the notion of the ITABoK capability model is very straightforward. And I'm going to dive right into that capability model. The capability model, and we're going to do a little demo, so don't worry too much about all the details yet, but we're going to do a little demo and then you can access it yourself. The capability model is one of the things that makes this people focused. Now back in about 2006, ISO went out to thousands of architects, as well as did a series of focus groups with very senior, successful architects. And we said, hey, let's stop talking about what processes you follow and what artifacts you create, and let's start talking about the skills that you have and how you grew those skills over time. And we built what's called we called the skills taxonomy, effectively what we call the capability model version 1.0. And it was daunting at best. It was a large body of skills. And what we found is through the years, we have improved and described each of those skills so that you as an architect or you as an architect team could analyze yourself and grow your skills with the least amount of searching and frustration possible, while still keeping a focus on what you have to do today. Meaning, we wanted a level of granularity in capability descriptions, what are the skills you need, that would allow you to improve point skills. Oh my gosh, next month I've got a presentation to the board of directors, and I've got to have a technology strategy that talks about how we're going to increase customer success by 5% or customer purchase behavior by 5%. What do I do? What skills do I need to do that? And how do I improve those skills and not just some generic, how do I improve my enterprise architecture skills? Which, if you're like me, means nothing. It's like saying, how do I improve my doctoring skills? You have to get specific, you have to get narrow. And so we built this capability guidebook to be that body of knowledge about the skills you need. Now, does that mean you're going to be perfect at all of them? Absolutely not. No one is, no one will be. And we're going to talk about how we've handled that again, in a way that is absolutely essential to you in just a minute. It's also reuse driven. So if I need to do a risk management plan for a program that I'm delivering, because I'm in execution mode on some innovative project or program or product that I'm working on, what do I need? What does a good risk management architecture presentation look like? So how do I get components and drive my growth in this skill, download a template, see a worked example that's a good one? How do I get that stuff? And where does it come from? And I say that one of the best things about the new ITABoK is that we're taking it very seriously from a product management perspective. Everything you see now will have a version. That version will be tied to the training that ISA offers. It will also be tied to the training that third parties can offer. So we're looking at, for example, accrediting universities programs to train to the ITABoK versions and to the ITABoK ISA certification, as opposed to all the training coming from ISA. Now, this has been a long-term dream. We never wanted to own all training for all architects. That's a silly thing for a nonprofit like ISA to do. We want to enable an education marketplace for you. But to do that, we have to be able to assure people in our certifications that if you hire an ISA CITA-S, you will get somebody who is good at architecture. Now, this goes way beyond things like the PMP and even the CITA-F and CITA-A, which tell you an individual knows something, all the way up to an individual can do something and has proven that they can do it well. And again, I go back to medicine. Think about board-certified specialists in medicine. They haven't just had to demonstrate it. They've had to demonstrate it so many times in front of mentoring and in front of their peers in an open capacity that I can pretty much guarantee a level of behavior. And that's what the ITABoK is tied to, and this body of knowledge is tied to. It's being able to say not just what is architecture, but what is a good architect? Again, according to the ISA model. And I keep wanting to go back to this notion that ISA is looking for a particular brand of architect. The innovator over the governance expert, the specialist over the specialist who is capable of driving execution over a general process-oriented person. So there's a few traits and characteristics and success factors that we're maximizing on. That doesn't mean everybody else is wrong. It just means that we know this works. Now, the capabilities are going to look pretty cool, and we're going to get to that demo here in a second. The second aspect of the ITABoK 2 and this is the first time this has ever been made really public, is the engagement model. An engagement model is exactly, it is very commonsensical, which is not a word, but that's okay. It's a common sense thing. When you go work for a new company, your first questions are likely, okay, what is architecture here? Okay, what are the processes used? What are the role descriptions? What artifacts do we have to fill out? What are the people and stakeholders' jobs, and when do we interact with them? How do we work together as a team? What are our internal architecture processes? What repository do we use? These questions. An engagement model is an objective method for answering those questions. So we've been out teaching an engagement model in Architect Core for many years. We're also teaching advanced engagement models to some of the largest corporations in the world. Part of the reason is because that architect teams, even individual architects, tend to not think about the basics of their role, process, artifacts, descriptions, and activities, and manage themselves. Again, a lot of architects look for top-down organization. So what does my CIO or COO say that architecture needs to be? And then they just do what they're told. That hasn't been successful. I don't mean there's anything wrong with it, and that's in some cases a political reality, but it hasn't worked. In many ways, architecture has failed because of those kinds of lack of ownership of our repeatable successes. Now, I'll go back to organizations we've worked with that when we started working with them, architects themselves did not define what architecture process were, meaning the people who were architects just were doing what some VP of application development told them to do. Perfectly fine. By the time we're done with working with an engagement model, and we do this both in our ISA engagements processes with our corporate members, as well as in a formal public capacity, by the time we're done, those organizations, the architects themselves, are empowered. And oddly enough, it is them empowering themselves, finding what makes them successful, and doing that over and over again that allows them to begin the journey to architecture maturity. And in version 3, we will actually have documented that architecture maturity levels in such a way that you can analyze your own organization. We work with all of our corporate members to gather this kind of information, and it includes all the stuff you would think it includes. What do we own? What are we known for? In the next 12 months, what are architects going to be remembered for? And that's really simple. It's, are we going to be remembered for technology value and innovation, or are we going to be remembered as the roadblock to success? Are we going to be remembered as some team off in a corner doing models? Or are we going to be on the floor with the delivery teams, both business and technology, making change happen? And that's the difference between the ISA model and the other models in the world, is it allows us to determine that for ourselves. The deliverables we use, the meetings we define, whether those be review type meetings or they be brainstorming type meetings, or we choose to not have any meetings at all and we just go to our stand-ups or some other kinds of things, and those are our, quote, meetings. The processes and how we describe them, as well as how do we get involved in the other aspects of the business, like procurement. Do we influence procurement, and if so, how? So these decisions are a fundamental part of the engagement model. And the final section of the ITABoK is a career planning tool. Now, we've had certifications for a long time at ISA, and there's some of the most successful certifications in the world. There's obviously TOGAF is the most successful in the terms of number of people that take it certification, and that's good. It's a good cert. But not everybody works with TOGAF, and we've been interested in something else. So our certification levels actually track to career milestones and a career path that can actually be implemented successfully inside of an organization. And so part of the ITABoK is this structure of how do architects actually officially think about career planning? And even more importantly, when we get to things like version 3 of the ITABoK, we're talking about how do HR teams plan for it? How does management plan for compensation? What are the average salaries in our region or our state? This kind of information including reusable job descriptions that connect with engagement models and a realistic capability taxonomy. Never been done before. So I'm extremely excited about this because what this allows us to do, I believe, in the ITABoK, is it allows us as a profession to have open access, and the ITABoK will always be free. You may actually have to register for our basic membership to access it. You don't currently. It's open right now, and we're making decisions about the pros and cons of that. But it will always be free. You will always be able to access it, and you will always be able to grow your team and your success based off of what's in there, because it allows us a method to gather data from what's actually working, as opposed to thinking about what should work, putting it out there, and then talking about how successful it was, even though everybody knows it wasn't successful. So we're looking for real case studies, and I hate to say this, we're actually looking for only case studies from the sort of implementation side, meaning we're looking for a kind of a non-vendor perspective in this, but I don't really hate to say it. We're looking for what works for companies that don't have anything to sell and that aren't trying to keep their people on an hourly rate. We want architects to be successful, and the only way to do that is to get the BS out of the system. And to do that, we have to talk about data and reusable success, and that includes career path planning tools and compensation structures for what you're actually doing that's valuable. Until we can describe that value and repeat that value on a regular basis, architect teams will always be at risk. So let's talk. Let's just do a little quick demo. Let's talk about those career levels. We have 4. We're going to get to. Oh, we've got a couple things to talk about first before we get to the demo. First is the career levels. The career levels that we've identified track an entire architect's career. Now, keep in mind, the ISA does believe in profession. What profession implies is that at some point in the future, there will be architects who were always architects. There will be software architects who were not full-time, 10-year veterans of software development. That's going to make a lot of people really queasy at their stomach, because it's really not possible in most of today's business. We also recognize it's not possible in most of today's business. However, ISA is building programs that are experiential in nature. So just because I won't have 10 years of experience as a software developer, titled software developer, doesn't mean I won't have 10 years experience writing code with teams as a software architect. It just means that I will have a different role. And in many ways, this empowers the architect and reinforces the career path. But when you think about it, it also empowers the teams themselves. Now, how many of you think of architecture as that capstone, what we often call the place where developers go to die, the place where operational staff goes to die, the place where business analysis goes to die? In many cases, architecture has been treated simply as a career capstone, not a value addition to the fundamental day-to-day activities of the organization. And this is part of the problem. It reduces the value of the architect, and it reduces the value of the team member. Meaning, if architect is where the software developer goes when they've had enough experience, because they don't, there's no other career path for them to stay, quote, stay technical, the whole system falls apart. And it means that architecture is a reward and not a value-based role in day-to-day activities. And that's our new model. Now, we've got a career path that represents that. So for those of you who have critiques about knowledge-based certifications in the IT field, we're fully aware of those. We're fully aware that most organizations and most certifications in technology-related fields have not been successful. This is not another Java certification. Java certification is a great thing, but the point is, this is a skill-based certification. Now, the ISA has 2 milestones that we've tracked for knowledge-based development, and those are the CITA F and the CITA A. Now, knowledge-based development says Not that you've practiced the skills, but that you've gone to training and you've learned these techniques in a classroom environment. It is the two levels above that, the CITA S and the CITA P, that represent the experiential certification. And so, you know, as you get thinking about what's important in the architect career path, you need to think about the fact that someday the entry point for most practicing jobs will be one of two things. It will be an internship where you have already learned the knowledge, but now you need experience, or it will be an experienced role. The, quote, internship would represent the CITA F, CITA A levels. The experienced senior architect role would represent the CITA F, CITA P level. So we're not only fully aware of the criticisms and the issues related to certification, but we've built a model that allows architects to gain experience over time, because it is fundamental to the ITABoK that you be able to improve your skills over a 40, 50-year career path at multiple different organizations. So the model itself had to be sophisticated, and that is why we've had such good success, because we've recognized the reality of all of those things. Now, I'm going to switch real carefully to a conversation that is a little more unspecific. So I'm just going to mention it, and that is the notion of generalization versus specialization. Now, in the ITABoK version 2, you're going to see a focus on specialization, business, infrastructure, information, and software architecture skills. There are two other roles that look a lot more like generalists in the world than they look like specialists. They have to be good at all four of those things as opposed to just one of them. And that is the solution and the enterprise architect. Now, in version 3, we will have fully, and we've dealt with the enterprise and solution architect. We have fully, advanced training for both of those roles and for those teams that's already in place and already being used by multinational companies. However, we're dealing with a body of knowledge, so this is the science. And so we're working towards, in version 3, a representation of those training classes that we have and the success that we've had in our ISA engagements that normalize the relationship between EA solution and EA and specialists. And there's a lot going on there. Obviously, we'd love your contribution. And that's the one thing I want to say going forward is this is a body of knowledge. It is in practice, and it has been tested for at least 7 years. And organizations have learned that what we're talking about here is the key to a successful practice, that other methods are not working effectively in both EA as well as in solutioning. Now, there's a lot going on there, and we want your support and activities. We want the architects to get involved with their own success. And that means we need data, and we need contributors on a constant basis. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to demonstrate real briefly what some of the capabilities and capability aspects look like, and then we're going to talk about the engagement model and show a little bit of what that looks like. And then we're going to get into career planning, and then we're going to talk about the roadmap. Now, we're going to do that relatively quickly because I want to leave about 5 minutes at the end. And honestly, the ITABoK is relatively large in terms of page count, and so I'm going to end up leaving it to you to explore over time. I'm just going to drag this in here. So this is the ITABoK 2.0, and I'm just more than thrilled that with the way it's shaping up. Now, as I said, let's start with the get involved, because I do want you involved. The get involved, there are two sides. First of all, there's a giving feedback button right here, and it walks you through the kinds of things that we want in terms of feedback and how we can do it. Again, we're looking for any feedback that you want to give, except for that you be aware of a couple of points, some rules of the road. This is not a flaming site. This is not a site where you go to just say this is stupid. If you do, we will delete your comments. If that continues, we will ban your IP address. We just don't have any use for that because it's not constructive. It doesn't help us do anything interesting for other architects. If you have something that you'd like to say. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. We absolutely want people who disagree, but let's make it disagreeing in a fashion that can help the authors build a better capability. And that would be, if I had my dream, my favorite version of disagreeing. If you disagree with a page, rewrite it. Somebody worked hard on that page for hours and hours and hours, and it was probably reviewed by at least a couple of dozen people. If you want to fix it, and then send it to us. And there's a beautiful little button right here on the side called Feedback and Issues. And if you click it, you can see, you'll get slowly, apparently in my internet connection, you'll get a form. And on that form, you can put in a whole host of commentary. Well, that really isn't working. Oh, there it goes. You can put in a summary of your issue. You can describe it. You can even talk about which components of the ITABoK that you have an issue with or that you want to improve. You can give it a priority, and you can do an upload. Copy and paste the content, put it in a Word document, and upload the Word document, and we will review it. And if it looks like it's better than what we have, we will replace what we have with what you've written, or we'll combine them. A couple of other things. Give references and case studies, and preferably not just we did it this way at this company. I want to know outcomes of we did it this way, right? There's always more to we did it this way than just that was the best way ever. What happened, and be specific. Now, be specific within reason. We're not asking for your secret sauce. If we're not under NDA, then you're going to take responsibility for what you submit to us. But we would love your elements of that. Also, we're looking for repeatability. So again, any case studies, any templates that you have, any patterns, any references will be gratefully posted. And if you want to speak, if it's a multilingual post, we'd be thrilled to take that. We prefer English in the first version, but we do have authors from all over the world, so it may be possible, so just keep that in mind. Again, we're looking for two types of feedback. One is comments, and if you just want to post a comment, you can see that every page has a comment section. I am excited by this release. And I can't spell. And there you go, I posted a comment. That's great. What we're looking for in the comment section is things that aren't that important that you want to mention. Of course, if you want to tell the author just how brilliant they are, we're very happy for you to do that. But mostly, the comment section is for discussion, questions, clarifications, maybe even minor edits. But keep in mind, we do not keep track of the comments in our management of versions. So whatever you write there may not get fed into the next version. The only place that we do that is from this feedback and issues button. So please use that if you want it to be tracked. And we do track these things, in Jira, and it's a very valuable tool for us for that. There's a whole lot of stuff in the ITABoK top-level menu. You can see as you scroll down, we describe architecture in detail. We describe why ITABoK. We describe what is architecture, the value of architecture, glossary of terms, an ethical standard. So you can see that we've got an ethics piece here, as well as a roadmap. And we'll come back to the roadmap in just a second. Now, the capabilities are modeled over here, and they are modeled under two primary sections. One is the pillars, and the 5 pillars are effectively what does it take to make an architect, all right? So you see the 5 pillars here under this section, and you'll see they are business technology strategy, IT environment, design skills, quality attributes, and human dynamics. You can also navigate over here on the right, and you'll see a list of each of the capabilities, and it's associated with that pillar. We also have the specializations, and you can see that for the time being, they list business, information, infrastructure, and software. Now, we are fully aware, and like I said, we even have courses on solution and enterprise architecture, as well as we do engagements with our corporate members on those. But again, the first public version of the ITABoK is focused on the pillars and the specializations, and so that's what we have managed here. Now, I'm going to bring up one of the capabilities and just show it very quickly, because I think it is probably one of one of two of the most important elements: what each capability looks like, and what they include. I think for the time being, I'm going to go with the business fundamentals. It's very extensive, so I'm just going to go with risk management, which is the one that I wrote. So now, what we've done here is we've given you a description of risk management, including a link to the Wikipedia definition. So we've effectively redefined it to a certain extent related to what architects need to know about. But we've also included the notion that this isn't meant to be the definition for risk management that is defined in dictionary.com and in places like Wikipedia. We've given an overview of what risk management is, what it contains. We've given proven practices for the architect, right? So benefits, architecture practices, and then we've focused on sub-capabilities. Now, in each of the sub-capabilities, that means this is a task or an activity that you would be doing in risk management as an architect or be involved in. It has a description of those things, and then it has learning objectives. So we have, again, those certification levels represent career milestones, and the learning objectives in that sub-capability that you need to be aware of to be defined at that level. So you can get very specific in this and understand tools, techniques, and learning goals, i.e. tasks, in all of the aspects of risk management for an architect. All of this has been written with an architect in mind. And below, you'll have links to things like templates, articles that are interesting related to that, as well as books and other resources that are of interest to you. Disagree with the definitions or want to add material? No problem. Click the little blue button. We can add to this over time. We can add, and we will be through the roadmap, refining, defining each of these. Not all of these are as fully filled out as others. Some of them are a little less filled out based on what we could get in the time frame of the ITABoK version 2 project. So, for example, we may have a capability that contains less information than this or more. And I'll just show that real quickly. If you look at Business Fundamentals, Mayamor did an amazing job of going in and really documenting what an architect needs to know about business fundamentals. And you can just see from the scroll links exactly how much content is available there. And we're very, very, sorry, this is Lyndon. I apologize to you, Lyndon. Maya was heavily involved in our valuation skill here, business valuation, which is also expensive. The goal of each of the capabilities, though, is to allow you and your team to understand what you should be doing in that space and give you tools and techniques to reach the next level in your capability as an individual or as a team. Now, I'm going to switch over real briefly to the engagement model. The engagement model, like I said, is a very interesting process. Now, originally, we defined the engagement model, and we were going to just give you an engagement model. Instead, what we've done is realize that the engagement model is an analysis technique for corporate and team capability. It's also effectively a process that you can go through together as a team to improve your practice. It does not give you a prescriptive method to follow. It is team-based. It's about you defining. It's what the agile teams would call self-organizing. It is about how you, in your role as an architect or as an architect team, define success for yourselves within a reasonable time frame at your particular customer or organization. There is no one answer. So if you ask me, Paul, what engagement model should we use? I'll say, okay, let's get together. I'll work with the team, or one of ISA's many experts will get together and work with the team, and we'll help you define that for yourself based on a guided, proven, working method. And that includes defining things like the actual roles, not just the job descriptions, but the roles. What do you do day to day, and what skills do you need to employ to be able to do that effectively? It will include your process and life cycle. If you're a TOVAP shop, that may include the ADM. It may not, or it may include a modified version of that. If you're an agile shop, we may start talking about things like value-based Kanban boards. And if you want to know what that is, I'll be posting a blog on it this week or next. We may be talking about the process that you use for strategic planning. We may be talking about the processes that you use for IT delivery. We will not be talking about optimizing your IT environment. We will talk about how architects actively get involved and engage and execute. And that's what ISO will be looking for. The tools you use, your value proposition and how you develop that, as well as the team layout and the interaction with stakeholders. Now, even in the largest teams I've worked with, we have seen that they do not have that many stakeholders. I just worked with an organization that has 80 architects, each one of which has about 10 different stakeholders they work with. Then with the overlap of major stakeholders, not everybody they've ever talked to, of course. With the overlap, it boils down to something like 400 stakeholders. For 80 people, 400 stakeholders, not that big a deal. We have to make a plan, though, for what those stakeholders are going to believe that architects do. And this, again, is a self-organizing aspect. Now, we can do this for the whole team, but we also do this for smaller teams. We just got done working with a corporate member that has 7 architects, 5 plus 2. We also do it with organizations who have people that aren't architects doing architecture tasks. Now, that might be things like the dev leads on projects, or the project managers, the business analysts, or even the business PMO. So things like that. The engagement model will give you then a description of how to define each of those things for yourself. But we've gone one step further, and we've also created the ISO Core engagement model. And the ISO Core engagement model is effectively the simplified engagement model that we teach in ISO Core. It is 16 steps over an annual process, and it's reasonably good for teams from 1 all the way up to about 20. It starts to fall apart when you get bigger than 15 to 20 architects in your team. Now, you can duplicate it over and over again, depending on how you organize those folks. But again, the core engagement model is meant to be extremely simple. It has 5 artifacts and 16 steps, and we teach it in our core workshops, and it has been implemented. It's actually been implemented by very, very large teams. But again, it is a planning to execution focused activity. So again, it's very much project or product team focused. In version 3, we will be launching an engagement model at scale. So think about the difference between Scrum and SAFe, or Scrum and DAD, which is the Disciplined Agile Framework from Scott Ambler and et al. The difference is, how do you take an architect team of 500 or 200 or 150 and scale the engagement model? Now, we teach this and we've done this with organizations, but again, we're trying to get that documented in a repeatable process. So you can expect to see that somewhere around version 2.5 or 3. And then the final concept, and I think you can kind of understand the career path. We've provided a reusable career path for you. It is, a pretty straightforward how-to guide on running your career path and what those levels that we've described are. But it also includes a set of reusable job descriptions that you can use and download. So you can see here, we've got job descriptions for everything, business architect, all the way through software, enterprise, and solution. Now, I just want to bring up one last thing before I open to questions, and that is the roadmap. The roadmap is, you can see here, it is now been caught up. We have everything from the original ITABoK version 1, which was actually called the Skills Taxonomy back then. The capability guidebook there will include all the original articles that were written, and I'll just click on it real quick so you can see all the original articles that were written for in 2007 through 2008, or excuse me, 2008, 2009, and the details that we have from them. So you can see some of the changes. There's no team building right now. That's changed to peer interaction, situational awareness, design prototypes. Some of these have changed deeply, but it is available from a historic perspective, and it's actually quite a fun read because it's all written from the first-person perspective. Now, version 1.5, this has been what the ITABoK has been for years now, for like 3 to 4 years, has been this kind of ITABoK self-paced training material. We give it away free with membership, with paid membership, so I guess it's arguably not completely free. There was an ebook written on it, and this is what the test is based on, is the ITABoK self-paced, and you can click on that and link to it. Version 2 is the one we're soft launching today, and that includes all the materials that you just saw, glossary of terms, ethics, engagement model overview, etc. Version 3 is where you can get involved. And here's where our roadmap is. And you can see we've got a product page that describes the plans that we have, of everything from the architect maturity model all the way through education reference guides. This is for academia. Trends and techniques, which I'd love to spend more time talking about and will be over the course of the next few weeks and months and years. Framework reference guides, again, links to those frameworks in the body of practice out there. Tools and knowledge tools and techniques. And then engagement model upgrades, a tool evaluation guide, industry reference models for particular industries, as well as many, many other aspects. So in the career path, for example, we'll be doing credential management updates, a compensation management plan for your HR department, as well as additional industry research like compensation research, et cetera, or salary surveys and those kinds of things. So quite a lot going on in the ITABoK in version 3, and you can look at that roadmap and get a sense of the time frame for it. Again, we're using pretty robust product management features going forward, and always looking for contributors. The contributors that, of course, do the most, provide the most value, will become contributor leads, which will then lead teams of contributors as our granularity grows, or the number of different components of the ITABoK grows. So it's been my real pleasure to introduce this to you today. There is a little button up at the top that says questions. There's no sound. Okay, well, hopefully that didn't continue. But if you want to insert questions, you'll have a little button that says, ask a question, and I'll be happy to answer any of those for those of you who have them. Otherwise, this recording itself and many of the others, as well as a couple of videos talking about this, will be going live with the ITABoK. You can expect the ITABoK, by the way, to freeze in terms of changes other than grammatical or definitional or spelling during versions. So by Monday of next week, the ITABoK, as it stands, will be frozen. Until then, you might see some drastic changes under development, things moving around a little bit as we're soft launching and putting a whole bunch of things. We may extend that freeze date till the following Friday, but I'm shooting to not do that. That means that the version will be frozen until we can compile all feedback into the version 2.5. And that kind of thing. Dan Johnson just asked a great question. How will certification change and when? Certification is being updated consistently. However, we will not change the version of the foundation certification. Now, we are changing the associate certs to be better right now to match our current state. CITA-F will change with version 2.5. So basically, this is a crowdsourcing effort. We're looking for feedback to temper and grow the quality of the public ITABoK. And in version 2.5, again, looking at that, it will be sometime towards the end of the year. We will also relaunch all of the certifications, including foundation and associate. That will be tracked on our career management guide as well as on the roadmap. So you'll be able to actually see which version of what the certifications are based on at this time. So that will be updated over the course of the next couple of weeks to include, so that you can always just go to the roadmap and say, okay, I want to take CITA A, software, what is that based on? Or I want to take CITA F, what is that based on? And then after 2.5, we expect to be releasing certifications along with ITABoK changes. Okay. Well, I don't see any additional questions coming in, so I want to thank you for your time today. And like I said, I'm tremendously excited about this launch, and I can't wait to get feedback from all of you. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.